The aim of this video is to talk through how to complete a Mann Whitney U test using SPSS. This particular dataset has 3 different groups within it. It has a control group, a placebo group, and an experimental group who receives some collagen. The dependent variable is the hip range of motion percentage improvement. In terms of setting up the dataset, you'd need to tell SPSS which group is which by setting up value labels. I've used 1, 2, and 3 here, and then linking up the value labels themselves to the categories that you've set them. Now, in order to complete a Mann Whitney U test in SPSS, we would need to go to the non-parametrics menu, and here's where I'm going to make a couple of choices. Now, were I to choose independent samples here, it would allow me to complete a test of those independent samples, but because of how the computer has been set up in terms of writing the software, it would ask me to do a Kruskal-Wallis test because I've got 3 independent groups. I'd need to select cases in the first place in order to use a Mann Whitney U test. Now, SPSS is very generously left in legacy dialogues, which allows us more freedom and choice in terms of what we're doing. So I want to complete a Mann Whitney U test. I'm going to use 2 independent samples test down here, and that allows me to choose what my grouping variables are and the groups I use. So I'm going to move the grouping variable over here. Now, the test I want to complete is between the control group and the placebo group, so I'll be using the numbers 1 and 2. So my grouping variable is over here. Make sure that this is highlighted in yellow first. Click on Define Groups and type in 1 and then 2. Now, if I wanted to do the other groups or comparisons here, I just need to change those numbers up. I need to move my dependent variable over into the test dependent list and then check that everything has come through correctly down here. Mann Whitney U test is the default that comes through. Click on OK and your output window emerges. So the first bit we get up here is information about the number of groups, the mean ranks of those groups, and the sum of those ranks. These values up here would be useful in calculating rank by serial R, which should be the effect size that you could be using the Mann Whitney U test. Down here we get the Mann Whitney U test statistics and the Z score. Now, in terms of which one of these we report, it depends upon sample size. If your sample size is large enough, you should be using Z. Anything above 25 is considered a large enough sample to shift towards Z. However, when we're below 20, we should be using Mann Whitney U. So we've got a choice of 2 test statistics. Z is calculated from the U value. We also have Wilcoxon's W here, which would be the value that we would get if we were using JASP. Now, we get 2 probability values in SPSS, the asymptotic significance value and the exact significance value. The choice of which one we use is dependent upon whether we are using Mann Whitney U or Z. If you're using U, you should be using the exact probability value. If you're using Z, you should be using the asymptotic significance value. Those choices, of course, again hinge around what your sample size is. So, in summary, if you want to complete a Mann Whitney U test within SPSS, you first of all need to consider how many groups you have, because that will dictate the means of calculating the software, or which way you would use the software to get to those particular tests. You would then need to consider your sample size in terms of which statistical values that you would report. I hope this helps in terms of using SPSS to calculate a Mann Whitney U test.